Hey everyone, today on Walk and Talk we are speaking with Mr. Rob Scarborough, one of Canada's most prolific cinematographers. And what makes Rob really unique is his dramatic lighting. Throughout his feature films, TV shows, commercials and music videos, he really has a way of pulling out some really unique images. And we're going to talk to Rob today about how he uses emotion to drive the technicality of his lighting style. But first, coffee. So Rob, you've been in this business for like 15 years now. What was that journey like for you? Where did it all begin and how did you get to where you are today?
Well, I went to school at Humber College and thought I wanted to direct, and then realized I was better at shooting people's movies. When I was a kid, I always had a camera on me, so I was a skateboarder, and we always made videos and took photos.
It seems like every DP now used to be a skateboarder.
Yeah.
Started with skateboarding.
Yeah, it is kind of like, it's this weird rebel mentality or something, you know? And then I went to, and then I started out as a PA on sets pretty quickly after I went to school.
Right.
And that PA stuff sort of led to sort of meeting some grips and electrics, who then sort of got me out for, you know, I worked for free for the first couple of jobs and earned the respect and trust. But through that music video world where I started as a PA, I learned a lot about every department. Right. Because like some days you're electric, some days you're a grip, some days you're a production PA. Right. So I learned a lot about that stuff. So I sort of met a lot of people that way, like a lot of grips, a lot of electrics. So they already kind of trusted me. And then sort of through that, I was always shooting stuff all the time. Yeah. Like from when I was PAing, I was still shooting things, and electricing, I was still shooting things. Right. And eventually that kind of, I just sort of stopped at some point. So I don't want to PA anymore, I don't want to electric anymore. Right. And I rather just shoot stuff. So I went through a phase of making that transition, which is always super tough. Yes, exactly. Because it's like
you have to define yourself.
Yeah, and you take a big financial hit.
That's right.
So I was working all the time as electric, and I was, you know, then I was worked sometimes as a DP. Yeah. And eventually I just kept at it until I started getting hired more and more. Right. Yeah, and I kind of now here. I'm here.
So Rob, most artists would say that inspiration is sort of everywhere, and a lot of people come here to Kensington Market, in fact, to get inspiration. But for you, where do you get your inspiration, and how does it find itself into your work?
Yeah, well, I think just when I walk around the streets, when I'm in a coffee shop, when I just take notes of every sort of interesting speck of light that I see, or I take a photo or a video, and then kind of just catalog that in my mind and in my phone, or you know, on a piece of paper, and I just kind of things that you can't think of happen in real life. So things that you can't necessarily like when you're trying to design a scene, you don't really think of this really cool, interesting light that's moving and past whatever. Right. And you see it in real life, like, oh, that's fucking cool. And I didn't know that it actually happened in real life. Right. So then you're like, oh, maybe I can do that, a version of that in like in a film or. Right. So I think to sort of push that into the dramatic world or the commercial world or whatever you want, right, is kind of like to bridge those gaps of like the reality and it being still not reality. So to bridge that gap of making it feel like reality, but it's the light's moving in a certain way or it is presented in a certain way. Right.
And I wonder too, like for me, the biggest revelation always was when I would see an amazing film and then I would hear the filmmaker talk about the film and how they designed it, that the things that I thought were just like creative genius were actually just referenced. Right, you know, they're like, I saw that walking down the street one day, totally, or I saw that in a photograph. Yeah, for sure.
I think I draw a lot of inspiration from photographers as well. For some reason, cities are what inspire me the most. So when I travel a lot, and I usually go to cities. I don't really I go to beaches sometimes. Yeah. But mostly cities, and cities is what's the most inspiring thing. Seeing like interesting faces, seeing what the light does through buildings and through windows. Right. That stuff just makes me excited in a weird way.
What do you prefer, city during the day or city at night?
That's a good question. Night, for sure. Yeah. Like you want to do a hose down the streets and stuff.
That's right, that's right. Yeah. And so your work is also quite dark, and often, even though you do a lot of comedy, it's very dramatic. Do you find that, again, you're getting inspiration from the city, or are you following some sort of convention in what you've learned over the years?
It's a good question. Like I guess the thing that I always want to talk to young filmmakers about is like just the language of movies. Yeah. the language of photography. I think that's kind of something that isn't talked about enough in schools, and I think it all sort of, you need to know that stuff, to study the language of film. Is like Spielberg's like the perfect classic example of that guy just knows where to move a camera, where to put it, how close, what lens, and to make someone feel something.
Right.
And I think that's the most important thing, is to like just pay attention to what the photograph or the film or that shot in the movie is doing to your emotions,
right.
and just take like a mental note of that feeling. And that's what kind of, I always try to recreate the feeling rather than a shot or a lighting setup. I try to recreate, what does that shot or that scene make me feel, and how do they get there?
That's great advice.
Yeah?
So speaking of dramatic lighting, a lot of people think that when you want to light dramatically, it's just very simple. It's high contrast, and maybe you throw a cyan gel in the back. But for masters and people that do it all the time like yourself, obviously the devil is in the details, and getting really great cinematic lighting is about a lot of these other subtle things. What are some of the techniques that you use to get really beautiful dramatic lighting?
Well, I guess I'm always sort of starting with the face. I started off as like a portrait photographer with friends, and just always had a camera around my neck, like I said. So it was always sort of based on, where's some cool lighting and I want to shoot my friends.
Right, exactly.
So my style kind of evolved from that, in that I sort of start with the face, and depending on the mood and the emotion of the situation, I kind of go from there. Whether it's like a high contrast, or a silhouette, or whatever that feeling is or emotion that we're trying to get from that moment, I kind of start with that, and the background kind of comes secondary. So, in the secondary, like the background, someone taught me something really kind of sort of helpful, and that you don't always need to see everything, right?
Right.
So you don't need to light everything. Yeah.
Completely crushed.
Yeah.
You don't need to see detail.
Yeah, you don't need to see detail sometimes. And I think that's the most important. One of the most important things I learned is like, to have actors walk through the light and go dark and go light again and go dark.
Now I'm going to challenge you in this
Yeah.
a little bit, because one thing that I did hear is that Roger Deakins says he likes to light the background first, and the reason is that number one is he wants to make the scene look natural and normal first. That's the priority, and then light the talent second. But he says if you light the talent first, the directors see the talent lit, and they go, oh, we're ready to go.
Right,
and they're like, no,
right.
no, we've got to do all of this other stuff first. And if you light the background first, it tells the director, oh, we're not ready yet.
Right.
What are your thoughts
like
on that?
To each their own, for sure. But I think for me, I kind of find that the emotion comes from the actors' faces. So if they're not lit properly, even if you have the background lit amazingly, and then you don't have time to light the face, you and then you skip out on that time lighting the face because you're rushing through it because you've only done the background, then you don't necessarily get that time and enough energy put towards that thing that's the most important thing.
I guess not everybody gets the time that Roger Deakins gets.
Yeah, he has the time to do the whole thing, right?
Yeah. So when we actually talked offline, you said to me one of the most important things to consider is that not every shot should be beautiful. And I think that's true certainly in documentary, where it's about just get the story, get the shot. But you're saying that's also true with dramatic work.
Yeah, I think if the shots becomes, if your cinematography becomes distracting, if the audience is saying, oh, that's a beautiful shot, already they're pulled out of the story instantly. So you want to hold those shots for important moments in a story, where you do want that moment to punch out from the rest of the scene or the rest of the movie.
So the key to many DPs' careers is the directors that they work with. How have you developed relationships with directors over the years, and have you stuck with some or never worked with some again? What's that been like for you?
Yeah. I think that's a really important thing that you don't really learn. That I guess my main relationship that I just shot a movie called Room for Rent that's coming out in June in theaters, but that director, Matt Atkinson, I went to school with. So we've been making things together for about 15 years. And you have this shorthand with someone that you work with so long that just isn't found in any other relationship. So you can go into a project and I know exactly where he wants the camera, how he wants it to move, the lighting he wants before he even sort of says it.
Right.
But I think it is kind of like dating. I think it is like you'll get paired with the director. Sometimes it'll go well, sometimes it won't. And I think it's pretty simple to see in pre-production if you're getting along in a way that you're going to work together again, right? Because I have a style, and they've hired me already for that style, so they know I can do what they want. But it's like a personality thing a lot too, right? If you get along with somebody, and you're just not, and you sort of had the same taste in movies or humor, that's usually what the connection point, and then the work almost comes secondary at some point.
So I think it's fair to assume that everybody wants to be both talented, but they also want to be great to work with. They want to have everyone love them. And what's the importance of being like a really good person to work with on set, in addition to being a great artist?
Yeah, I think it's very important to sort of have that balance of, you know, in a high pressure cooker situation, be the calm guy on the set, because, you know, the yelling and fussing and being a little bit, you know, like a child. Some people can do that on set. If you're doing that, people are more afraid of you than they want to work hard for you. Right. And I'd rather people want to work hard for me because I'm like a good human being, rather than them being scared of me, and that's what causes them to work harder for me, because they're scared of the repercussions of that.
Exactly.
So I think it's an important balance that you have to strike, especially when it's so intense all the time.
So your career is now at a place where everything you do is pretty high quality. Was there ever a time that you remember having, you know, mediocre work, or when you weren't such a great shooter, and how did you get from there to here?
Yeah, I think that the main thing I always remember is to always be challenging myself, always be looking for something that's interesting to you to shoot, something that's not sort of, maybe not even in your wheelhouse, something that's sort of, that allows you to evolve as a shooter. Like, because you can get into the zone where you're just working, and you forget that why you love what you do, until you sink your teeth into something that's a little more meaty as far as what's sort of feeding your own artistic soul in a lame way I'm putting it. But yeah, so I think just always be searching for those projects that feed yourself creatively, and maybe you'll meet someone interesting on that project, but always sort of be trying to evolve yourself, really.
Okay. Yeah. So you're saying basically that, you know, it's not just like the quantity of the stuff that you're shooting, it's not, you know, which is true, you always want to be shooting, but it's always mixing, you know, the stuff that pays the bills with stuff that might be just wildly experimental, that then can feed in.
Yeah. I think you can get. I've gotten in a zone where I'm just working for the sake of working, and then I realize, you know, 3-4 months in, I'm like, oh my god, I haven't done anything that I love, right? I haven't like really done anything that I can like show my family or show the people I know that I'm really proud of. So I think I'm always very conscious of making sure I do a couple of those types of projects a year. And if at some point during the year I say I haven't done that, then I'll stop everything, take time off, and find those projects and make sure that I'm doing something that is making myself better as a shooter. You know?
That's awesome. Thanks so much, man. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, of course.
And good luck, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Ciao, buddy.